Mark?
No, easy now. Come on, we have to keep him.
Do I do something?
No, you wait.
If you believe this man has gone blank as I have.
There's this epic story, and yet the character stories and the relationships between these characters was endearing.
I was a little tiny cog in a very big wheel.
I'll always cherish the opportunity and the honor to have worked with so many legendary performers.
We're talking about the famous, never forgotten, epic space odyssey adventure series called Battlestar Galactica, produced back in 1978.
Battlestar Galactica was a huge show.
It was just mind-boggling. It was so big.
We were on the cover of every major national, international magazine.
Oh yeah, that was touted around the country, around the world.
We had so much hype.
It was one of the biggest events ever on television. I believe they had 60, 70 million people watch the original episode air on TV. And I think it was either number 4 or number 5. It was the highest rated network sci-fi debut ever in history.
So it was a huge launch. And in the middle of that was Lorne Greene, which in the story of Battlestar Galactica, he was the guy that kept us all together. It was true of the production, too. So he kept everything sort of steady. And we all kind of, you know, were finding our ways around him.
For us, it was kind of a getting to know one another, and it happened kind of fast and kind of organically.
One of the biggest problems we had shooting Battlestar Galactica was the fact that there was very little lead time because we were forced to go to series so quickly, and I believe Glenn wanted to push it back a year. ABC wanted it now, and it changed from a miniseries very quickly into a series, which meant they had to really rush and prepare scripts. Imagine being in the 4th hour of the miniseries and realizing within a couple of weeks you're going into series and having to develop now a whole series of scripts and a story arc to take this series into 24 episodes.
We did some good things. It was a killer. I mean, you know, we were working around the clock. You know, sometimes you beg for a bullet to put me out of my misery with this. It was tough. It was tough to get those things out in the time we had.
We were getting scenes at the last minute. We were getting scripts at the last second. Right before you're gonna shoot. Hey, here's the rewrite. Wait, we're shooting!
Oh, sometimes we got the rewritten pages the day after we'd shot it. We'd already shot the other stuff and they sent new pages and we did this yesterday.
We spent a great deal of time learning the changes, and it really kept us all out of trouble because we didn't have time for a social life. We were so busy learning what we had to do.
There's one scene that we're all sitting around a table having a strategy meeting. We literally had been given those pages that morning. If you look at the scene, there's an awful lot of deep thinking going on. There's a lot of people going, well, I think, and then I think Herb actually like rocks back in his chair and does this, and he's looking at the post where his words are.
There was a point where we would shoot 2 or 3 episodes at a time, and scripts, we were writing it literally as we went. 5 minutes before we would get on camera, they would, you know, hand us new dialogue, new pages, and we'd learn them. And I mean, there would even times where they would mess the pages up, and we'd get pages from the other script, and there was so much chaos going on sometimes where you just didn't know which end was up.
And we were running back and forth. And we'd go in and look at the pages and go, okay, what show is this? What's happening now? It was kind of crazy.
I remember it was Monday, and we were waiting for a go-ahead on our next script. Wednesday afternoon, about 3:30, or maybe even later, we got the go-ahead to write Murder on the Rising Star. We had a log line. We had murder occurs, blah, blah, blah. We had no story. That had to be finished in Mimeo Friday morning at 7 o'clock. We didn't go home.
I quite honestly don't believe I even had a full script before I started shooting. So a lot of the decisions were made on basically what we had. We were pretty much kind of like on the run the minute we got it.
Glenn and Don Belisario were both under the gun to get them done, to make them exciting, interesting, and humorous. And I think it was hard. A lot of times you had to think on your feet.
Sometimes we'd have to shut down for an hour while the actors went away and learned their lines, and while I tried to figure out what the devil to do with the scene in the first place.
I mean, first of all, it was the biggest thing on American television, you know, that was being shot at that time. It was the first time they really went for a movie. Imagine doing not only a series, but a series on the epic size and scope of a theatrical movie on an hourly basis weekly.
The conflict was to keep the pressure off of everybody. My job has always been to give the crew, all the actors, everybody, a chance to do what they do as well as they can possibly do it so that they can be creative to the best of their ability.
Find the control center? We found it, all right.
Where?
There! Let's go!
I never before or after that had an experience like that. It's really what film is all about, the magic.
Pretending the sets and the costumes and the Cylons and everything was so real. You walk onto the set and you feel like you're a part of what's going on. And for some reason, I had always been friends with special effects people, and I always thought that was really neat. So they would always show me how they did it and let me play with the little flashes and the explosions.
Of course, when the special effects are done right, as in our case, we had John Dykstra, the best of the best, doing all the special effects for us. The realities they created was extraordinary.
I think it was a little groundbreaking at the time. They didn't have the advantage of what they have nowadays with the CGI, computer-generated imagery. We didn't have that luxury. We had matte shots and some miniatures.
The interesting thing about making Galactica is that some of the scenes were very mechanical and were all composed in the camera. The bridge is a combination of a live set. It's a combination of the actors who are playing on that and the effects guys who set the charges and the effects guys who set the beams to drop into place. It's what is on the monitors themselves and all of those sunk to 24-frame camera and the front projection screens that all had to time to what's going to happen in front. So it was interesting in terms of timing to try to put all those things together and composite in the camera. Other times, certainly when the compositing didn't really happen in the camera, we were talking about the attack of the Cylons that we shot down in Long Beach, where the Cylon ships came in, and that was all digital and composed even before we went and picked the location. The shape and form of the flight of those was already something that John was developing, because it took a while, frame by frame, to animate that. So he said to me, here's what they're going to do. They're going to come in like this, they're going to come in like this. We said, okay, then we can put the charges here and put the effects people in here. So it was be able to create then that part, which was composed in the camera, and left to send over to Apogee and to John to put the Vipers in and put the streaks that came down and hit the mechanical charges.
A lot of it was matte. It was a black screen. Later, they would put a matte into the camera and show what world they wanted back there. Some of it was from projection. Like in the Vipers, they had loops projected behind us. And we would sit in our Vipers and then in front of a screen in the middle of a soundstage. And a guy running around with a broom. He'd go, look over here, now we're down here. I said, well, where are the Cylons aircraft? Which way do we look? And they go, well, hold it here and then hold it up there. I had a great deal of difficulty doing the Viper shots when we first started. It was so antiseptic. First of all, you were just alone.
I just hope the Pegasus is still around when you get there.
And they saved it all until usually Friday. And you do all the Viper shots in one day. And you just sit there and they do scene after scene after scene after scene.
I got him on the right.
I got him. Apollo, no, look out, look out!
It's all right, Apollo, I'm picking him up.
Dive! Oh, frack!
Felger carb.
Cut!
And there were times when we'd have 2 or 3 guys on each side of the cockpit mock-up, and if we were meant to bank left or right or nose up or nose down, they would physically just yank you this way or yank you that way or lift you up a little bit.
We all wanted to get in there, go boom, shoot through space at light speed. I built it up into this extraordinary experience, and I couldn't wait to get in the Viper and fly through space, but it was nowhere resembling the fantasy. And then they pulled a joke on me because they actually had 2 of these Vipers, and so one time I'm flying through space and trying to be serious, and all of a sudden I'm looking out the right side and I see another Viper and it's going the opposite direction and it's sitting next to me. I'm supposed to be going breakneck speeds and he's slowly going by and I look over and it's Dirk.
And he does this wonderful double take because all the ships are going the other way except for him. I don't know if they turned the cockpit mock-up around or something. It's terribly funny.
It was challenging to get the background plates to time with the actors, or the actors to time with the background plates, as the case may be.
Action.
Right here, Apollo.
The loops that they used on the projection behind us were very short. That's the thing, you'd have 3 seconds or 6 seconds to watch it react and then say your line.
And action. Starbuck. Holy frack. Apollo. All right, let's do it again. Ready, and action. Starbuck. Holy frack. Apollo.
They're all around us.
Okay. Ready, one more. We got one more.
Maybe I should get us.
And action. Starbuck. Holy frack. Apollo. Okay, cut.
I can do love scenes in 3 seconds, but I couldn't do the Viper shots.
Make believe like it's wonderful.
Now let's go.
Starbuck did have sex in the show, but there was only one really kind of love scene. We shot that scene, by the way, 2 ways, one with my shirt on and one with it off. It was great fun. We giggled a lot.
Listen, if it goes for 30 or 40 seconds.
It was great to have those love scenes with somebody that you really liked, you know.
They called and they said, we have to reshoot the launch tubes. And I said, why? And they said, well, you guys are having a little too much fun. We were laughing so much, and Starbuck had his shirt off.
Oh, Cassie.
Becky.
The network went, this is the kid time. We can't, Starbuck shouldn't have his shirt off. That implies something else is going on in there, and we just want it to be a romantic, sweet thing.
Okay, cut it, that's fine.
You know, when you think of moments that were memorable to you, one was Triad actually playing it. We got to play it. I mean, we'd hang out on the set, and while they were setting up, and we were all evolving the game, so we were actually playing games against each other. That was extremely fun day.
They put us in these, like, jock straps. They were so embarrassing. We were nothing more than hunks of flesh. We were beefcake. There was exploitation of male sexuality.
Action! Starbuck! Take it easy. Take it easy. Take it easy.
And I've had a baritone voice since I'm about 13, 14 years old. You got into that doggone thing. I mean, these things were so doggone tight, I thought I was gonna turn into a tenor, man.
Well, Lorette and I just had the best time with those boys in those Triad uniforms because they came out in little Speedo shorts with hockey helmets on, and we just teased them terribly.
I mean, she has a much more vivid memory of this. And it was the whole thing about those costumes that the guys wore were a scream, you know? They just cried out for you know, teasing. I mean, these guys had been in these great warrior costumes with their laser guns, and then they come in these little funny Triad things with their little helmets and their little ears sticking out, and they were so cute. And so we kept trying to think of funny things to do.
There's a shot where both Dirk and Richard are about to go into the arena of, you know, to play their Triad game, and us girls are standing behind them like, you know, you go guys, you go win this Triad game for us girls. And they turn and look at each other and give one of these heroic, let's go into the field of battle looks to each other, at which point Lorette and I grabbed the back of those little Speedo pants and went, yank! And we gave those boys wedgies they still remember.
She's the instigator on that one, but we laughed so hard. We felt that we had the upper hand in that situation with the guys.
The raid on Gomorrah, when we all parachuted in our very slick-looking black leather spandex outfits, we all thought we were so hot in those. And hockey helmets again. God bless Jean-Pierre Dorléac. He was the most creative designer.
That was where I got to get out of my med tech uniform. They were hot, but they were, you didn't care. I mean, Annie Lockhart and I were so thrilled to have something like that and strut around a little bit and have laser guns.
There were lots of, explosions going off, and we did have our lasers, our handheld lasers, and there was lots of, ducking and hiding, so it was pretty cool.
Sheba, take him!
We had skydivers. They actually jumped right over Cal State Northridge, and they came in and landed right on the money. For the actors scene, they had a crane and they had us in a full harness, and they just swung us down to the ground, at speed, of course, firing the lasers, blowing up the Cylons.
Don't shoot!
That was my dream episode in that way, and working with Lloyd Bridges. First, they were going to bring in Richard Crenna to do that, which at that time I thought, ooh, wow, that would be so great. And these guys had to be bigger than life, and Lloyd Bridges was all of that.
Commander Kane is a incarnation of someone like General Patton. A good Cylon's a dead Cylon, and why are we running? We should stop and get rid of these guys now, or they're going to be on our ass forever. He became a really popular character when he came in, and there's fruit there for further exploration.
He was quite a bit older than me, and it was a little intimidating for me to do scenes with him in the beginning, but he made it very simple. He'd say, well, let's run it through. Let's run it a couple of times.
They had a romance, and Starbuck got jealous.
Lloyd Bridges comes in, and he's used to Cassiopeia hanging out waiting for him, and all of a sudden there was a guy in her past.
First I thought, oh, there's an old guy, and then the minute he showed up, they made a better couple than Starbuck and Cassiopeia did. And I thought their scenes together were very, very good.
I ran into his wife a couple years ago. I said, I worked with your husband years ago. And she said, that's right. And we talked about it. And she said, he was a little old for you. And we really laughed about it.
The other character that I responded to very much was Patrick Macnee.
Patrick Macnee came aboard as a mysterious character who was really mythically, or in reality, supposed to represent the devil.
It was a very clever character, which I played over 2 weeks, very well, incidentally. And you never knew whether he was good or bad. And that was the whole point of the character, yes. So it was directed in 2 parts. I was in 2 episodes of it. A very good show.
There's a piece of that episode which is my favorite line ever spoken to me by any other character in Battlestar Galactica, and Patrick Macnee said it to me, although it was cut. There is a scene in the aggro ship when I am very much in a trance, and he has got me under his spell, and he's saying, I can be what you want, and I know what you're looking for.
Put your trust in me, and I promise you that everything will be possible.
And then he kisses me. And prior to kissing me, I had a line which was something like, I'm afraid, or I'm scared. And Pat's next line, which he did his best to deliver with a straight face, was, oh, Sheba, nothing can harm you as long as I am inside you.
He cannot touch you so long as I am inside.
I burst out laughing. He burst out laughing. He tried to look past my ear and say it to me. I tried to look at his forehead when he said it. And it was so funny. We just got, terrible giggles. We did finally actually manage to get this line of dialogue out. In those days, it was Standards and Practices who were the network censors, and I think they looked at it and said, you can't have that man saying that to her.
When they first land on the planet to see the spaceship where Ibley has crashed, it was shot in infrared to give it a real otherworldly look.
You say that your knowledge of the universe is infinite. Have you ever heard of the planet Earth?
I have been there.
The part of War of the Gods that was shot on infrared film, a decision was made to try this process, and it made everything look really weird and eerie because it changes the colors of everything. Our makeup had to be kind of a mint green. It was sort of this pale greeny thing they put on our faces. And I remember sitting there looking at myself in the makeup trailer thinking, I don't want to be seen like this. And they said, oh, no, you're going to look great. I went, great, I look like pea soup, you know?
You two ought to see yourselves. You look really weird.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen you look better.
Probably my favorite shot, because who didn't grow up wanting to be in a Western and strap on a gun and, you know, be able to basically have a gunfight? I got to do that in The Lost Warrior. I got to go up against Red Eye, and that was one of my obviously favorite shows.
It was a really interesting father-son Shane kind of story, which I thought was pretty neat. And then a little High Noon thrown in, you know, for good measure. And the town kind of being oppressed by these other guys because they had the big gun, you know, and once they lost the big gun, they showed, you know, who they really were, weaklings.
And in a sense, it kind of epitomized the show. The technological, the human, you know, the controlled and the liberated, free thinking, free, expressive human being. And I think in a sense, all of Battlestar was about that. But it was so cool to pull the gun, fire away, and see that big Cylon explode. And then I remember they had the little strap on the back and the special effects to slam him backwards against the wall.
I don't recall The Lost Warrior being much of a long day type of shoot. We were on the back lot, as a matter of fact. The horseback scene was up where the Universal Amphitheater is now. Up on that hill, it was so cold. Well, it's a bing and a bang and a boom and you're done. But you're up there 3, 4, 5 hours. I mean, your jaw starts shaking. You start chattering. It's so cold from the winds across the top of that hill. But when we got into the MAGA character on 9 Lives and with Baltar's Escape, they were killer days. It was terribly hot. There's about 40 pounds of wardrobe, a Brillo pad beard, and Apache-type wig, and it was a 5 o'clock makeup call on the set about 7 or 7:15, and we had another hour to take that stuff off so that it could be reused the next morning.
They took about, I would say, about 3 hours of makeup, maybe even more. But those guys, I have to admire them. That's brutal. And I must have been even more brutal then because, you know, a lot of the techniques that have been developed on the motion pictures, you know, in those times, the eyebrows were plastic. You know, he couldn't do a thing with it. So that, I'm sure, was not what I would consider unadulterated fun.
It was itchy and it was hot. It was uncomfortable. Those are plastic pieces glued to your face to get that Cro-Magnon forehead. And then there's kind of a really tough Brillo pad type beard, which is glued on. So you have to kind of talk like this, and you don't move a lot. And then what do you have for lunch? Well, you can't chew. It was too hot to have soup, but the best thing would be a broth through a straw. You just couldn't do much because of the heat. And then, of course, you got back a little early to get it all made sure it was going to stay on. Those shows, those characters took a lot out of you.
He needed a weapon that they would use. We figured, well, these guys seem a little bit less than scientific, if you will. They don't seem too futuristic, but yet they would have something that would be futuristic. What is a weapon that people who don't have a lot of technology would use? And we ran through the gamut, and we thought about the bolos in South America that the gauchos use. And we thought, yeah, but wouldn't it be cool if, as soon as these two balls got apart, a laser beam came, no matter how far apart they were, and it would just slice through anything? I mean, that's nasty.
They were a crystal ball lit up, and then the actual flight of the weapon was put in later. We had to imagine that you would unstick one Velcro, biggity bang, draw back, throw, and then they would put in it leaving your hand. They probably put the glow in when they put the streak in, because they were just a lit crystal ball. You threw it like a baseball, and where it hit was put in later. There was no way you could throw a charged missile across the room at actors.
Now, Megan, now, shoot! Go, go!
I'll always cherish the opportunity and the honor to have worked with so many wonderful people on this show. Fred Astaire, for example, a living legend.
I went up to meet him at his house, and I said, with Don, and I said to Fred, I said, what is it that draws you to this? He says, my grandkids want me to do it so they can watch me. He said, well, we have a little dance scene. He said, oh, no dancing. I said, listen, this is a slow dance that you're having a conversation with somebody. This is not Fred Astaire dancing, and you could just shuffle. That's all you want. He says, oh, that's all you're gonna get is a shuffle. And I said, that's fine.
He didn't want to dance. He just didn't want to do it. So Rod Holcomb, the director, cajoled him, and he finally acquiesced, and he did it, and it may be the last time that Astaire ever danced on film.
One of the Vipers, they had these guns on the Vipers that actually were practical. They would fire, and the thing breaks down. They won't fire. So they're working on them. And Fred Astaire I'm sitting in my chair, and he's about 20, 30, 40 feet away with his arm leaning on the wing of this mock-up Viper. It's the big mock-up, the actual size Viper. He's leaning there. And I'm looking at him thinking, I wish I had a shot of Fred Astaire as Chameleon leaning against the Viper. It's gold. It's so fantastic. As I'm watching him, the guys that are working on the guns, just get the guns to fire, and they start firing, but in a very inconsistent way. They go ba 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 ba, and Fred, like you plugged him into an outlet, comes alive and starts to dance in the shadows, unnoticed by anybody but me. Fred is dancing to this weird rhythm. He comes over and he sits down. I said, Fred, I saw you dancing in the shadows. He looks at me. He says, there's something about that rhythm. He says, I got a whole idea for a show, a special, done in outer space. He said, he said, but that rhythm triggered it. He says, yeah, but I'm done. But it's funny, we had Fred Astaire, Ray Bolger, and Bobby Van, three of the all-time great dancers. Now, Bobby Van, people may not remember, but Bobby Van and I became good friends. Bobby Van and I were shipped off to Canada. We get to Montreal, it's like 30 below zero. It was so cold that the cameras would freeze. They had this motorhome for Bobby and I. It was buried with ice. It was like an ice house, something out of Dr. Zhivago. It was 30 below zero, it was so cold.
Why, back on Terra, I doubt if I'd be given an
enema.
Why, back on Terra, I doubt if I'd even be given a license to the 5VB.
Hector and Vector, Greetings from Earth. They were so funny. In real life.
To have been on a call sheet and had a scene with the likes of Ray Bolger, Fred Astaire, Lloyd Bridges, Lorne Greene. These are the memories I will always carry with me. Lorne was the anchor. We all kind of gravitated to him.
He just filled my heart. One time, the People's Choice Awards, there was politics, and everybody wasn't invited. The guys were invited. Glenn Larson, because Annie Lockhart and I weren't invited to go with the group. Glenn took Annie Lockhart, and Lauren called me, and he said, you know what, come with me. My wife can't go, and she said, why don't you take Lorette? He sent a limousine to pick me up, and it was a black tie event. It was so exciting. And we talked all the way there, and that's just the man Lauren was. He was very caring and told the worst jokes.
It's like hearing an off-color joke coming from one of your parents. You kind of go, whoa, did you just tell me that?
I mean, we'd be standing on the set, and behind the scenes, he would tell a story and get us all laughing, and then say, okay, let's go, action. It would take us forever to compose, and Lauren could, boom, he could compose himself in 2 seconds.
Action. More of those unidentified ships?
He had a great sense of humor, and he was kind of a father figure for everybody in the cast. And there was, as there is usually, a certain amount of tension and dissension, but he brought us together.
It's just a quality he had that was very wise casting. I think the show was very well cast. I can say that objectively. I think it was very well cast. I think definitely Richard is perfect. And he and Lorne, Richard and Lorne had a chemistry, and they were very similar in a way. They had this very they have a serious nature and a passion.
I'm into Egyptology. I'm into exploring all those kinds of historical things. And Battlestar went into all those areas. That's what I love so much about it. I started reading about the Mayans and the Egyptians.
We actually sent a crew to Egypt just to do those couple of shots where they're walking towards that great temple. It was funny. They would not let a girl wear a man's clothes, so they put this dumpy little boy in this outfit that's supposed to be Jane Seymour, and the minute she walks away from camera, I look and I say, oh my God, her butt's hanging, touching the ground, and Jane is going to kill me if we use any part of this. So we had to cut very carefully so that we didn't hang on any of these shots in which this little boy was playing Jane Seymour, you know, in one of the flight suits.
We sent an associate producer over to Egypt to go to Luxor with some of the costumes, and you know, he, I don't know, we found a couple of guys at the hotel and dressed them up, and he ran them through and he did some other shots of the pyramids and so forth, so that was kind of fun.
You know, the hard thing with sets is that you never know how explosions are gonna go or how far out they're gonna hit, and you have to be very careful whenever you're gonna get wounded or someone's firing at you and you have these squibs on that sometimes explode inward. But when the set crumbled, when that whole thing crumbled inside that little vault, I hate to say it, but all the materials they used to build those sets, it's just, you wouldn't want to touch that stuff, you know? It's probably some of the most toxic material on the face of the planet, and we were just covered with that material as it went crashing down on us. Our costumes, our hair, everything, part of us was inundated with all that crap. I remember Baltar was in that scene as well.
You can't leave me here. You have not heard the last of Baltar.
It was the joy of John in that character, that character was so evil and went through and directed all this and was such a traitor to mankind, and that finally in the end, as he said, you know, you can't possibly be me. I'm not going to be lost here, am I?
Surely you don't mean me.
And was then decapitated.
Centurion? You can't! You can eat it!
John was very much into his character, you know. You had to be a little careful of tearing John down from the rafters sometimes and getting him down to a little size down here because he would really eat that stuff up. You know, he just enjoyed playing that villain so much.
He didn't play a character. That was John. John was this larger-than-life. You put him in a costume and put him on the chair, and when he got up there, he was king of the world, you know. And when he wasn't up there, he was still king of the world. And we always shot up at him, made him look bigger than life. Well, because he was the arch villain. The show is only as good as its villain. He was brilliant. That takes a tremendous theatricality and stage background to be that big and yet believable, and to be so wonderfully enthused about being so evil.
Oh! Welcome, Baltar. You have done well.
I have done well. What have you done? What of our bargain? My colony was to be spared.
I don't think they ever used any of the close-ups of that creature. I think it was just always the wide shot of just him on the pedestal and the voice. Too bad the lizard was lost.
You know, showing up to work and seeing all these creatures from various planets with all the, because they would go to makeup like hours before we start shooting and have all this stuff done. So it was wonderful as an actor to come in and see all this. And of course, then the android sisters, the fact that they had, what was it, 4 mouths and 3 sets of eyes. Of course, there was a whole sexual undertone. I remember trying to play that, but it was like, whoa, you know, so many mouths to kiss. And
that was really funny to work, because these girls were really pretty, man, until they put all the makeup on them.
I thought that was one of the most interesting things that they had done at the time. It was a mask that fit over their face so you could see their eyes and their mouth. There was a mouth below and there were eyes out to the side, and the eyes out to the side would blink and move because it was remotely controlled, and the mouth underneath was remotely controlled. It's like the ears with the Daggett, you know? Isn't that cute?
The dang Daggett. The Daggett was a very interesting, had a very interesting actor. It was a little monkey.
Evie, the chimpanzee, she was like my best friend on the set. You know, whoever came up with that brilliant idea to have a chimpanzee and that dog.
Because the movements of this little robot were so unpredictable. And sometimes I would be just biting my lip when we were rolling because I'd be behind the camera and starting to break up because this darn thing would be moving around and looking at things because it was curious, you know, what was going on. And so I think that the interaction with that Daggett, it added an element of humor.
We had all kinds of performers in that show. The Ovions were probably, I think, the most effectively frightening creature that was created for the show. And I remember rescuing Cassiopeia from being in their tombs where they put them before they eat them, and her screaming.
I screamed a lot, a lot. I lost my voice doing that. It was so creepy, but very cool. They put me in a drawer and slid it out, and then these guys come in with all their bee makeup.
And once again, it's very sexual, you know, that whole thing is like kind of, you know, to me, or maybe I just have problems in there. The whole show is one sexual, no. Yeah, okay.
What a great fantasy, and here come the handsome guys, and they're coming in to rescue me.
Cassiopeia!
The Ovions were pretty spooky. They were spooky. And we had that whole shootout and that run and that escape.
This way! Run, Boxy!
Escaping from the Ovions, when we had that great bridge and the blue screen behind, that was so incredible because we were on the Phantom of the Opera soundstage, and there was this big thing set up with a ramp running across. I mean, really high across the top of the soundstage.
We had to run up on a platform that was like 40 feet up in the air. I was freaked. So they brought in a little stuntman and dressed him up like me, and they had him run, you know? It was a little scary for me.
We ended up on stage 27, and it was still there. The stage was there, and the opera house was still there, and within one of those Cylon shootouts, we caught stage 27 on fire, and everybody had to leave the stage. It wasn't a big fire, it was a small fire, it was fire nonetheless, and they didn't want to lose the Phantom of the Opera stage, you know? So all the fire department came, and they finally put this fire out. We went back to work.
Fire in space, that was a lot of fun. And I got to do a stunt like diving through an air vent, you know, and it was like my first stunt I ever did. And I just remember, yeah, I was gonna do this dive into this air vent, and I went.
Come back!
Boxy! Boxy!
Everybody stood up and clapped, and I think that was probably one of my favorite things.
He was a very athletic little fella. He did all of that, you know. In fact, we had to really tone him down a little bit because he'd get so athletic, he'd jump right out of the frame. That kid was in good shape. They did an explosion where Boomer very dramatically dived through the door just as the explosion goes off and the door closes behind him. Yeah, it was kind of neat.
Roxy, looks like I mashed your mushy.
Working with Noah was a pleasure. Kind of a neat little thing where the little fella holds onto my hand and walks away, but he pulls me over to my mark because I missed my mark, right? And he nailed his.
Off the show, I babysat for him a couple times, although Noah referred to it as a date. And he wanted to take me one time to see Saturday Night Fever, which was his favorite movie then. And I went to pick him up, and I pull up, and he comes out in a white suit. He was so cute. And he's got a white jacket and white pants, and we went to the movies, and we saw Saturday Night Fever together. And he held my hand, and gosh, he was just the cutest thing.
One time I remember lunch, they gave me a beer, you know, half a beer, and we had done my close-ups before lunch, and I couldn't get a line out, and everybody was cracking up, and it was just funny. I couldn't remember one line, so they had to have somebody read my lines off the side to Richard, and we did interesting things like that, like get Noah, you know, tipsy. You know, I had the biggest crush on Jane Seymour the whole time I was working on it. It's just beautiful, you know. I remember having my mom buy her perfume for her birthday. 6. Hustler. I was the little Mac Daddy at 6.
I can't even imagine a more beautiful woman than Jane Seymour. We hit it off. I mean, I felt very fortunate to have a romantic love interest in the form of Jane Seymour, and I must say I did have a secret little fantasy there.
Good.
And I think their relationship was a wonderful, tender, sensitive love story between the two of them. And I thought there was kind of a nice way that they handled that as that relationship slowly developed. And in the second episode where we got married.
The wedding was very important. I remember with all the candles, I remember that. We shot part of it one time and it just wasn't satisfactory. We didn't have enough candles, and so we really just like went overboard, and that's what we ended up.
Cut. All right.
I remember when they killed off the mom, Jane Seymour. It was just I remember that day, I think, better than anything. It was just very somber. Everybody was crying. It was just a very, very heavy, emotionally day.
It was probably one of the most poignant episodes on Battlestar Galactica, and the scene where I take her son and basically explain to him what happened.
But it's her body that's gone boxing, not her spirit or her love for us. We'll have that always, forever.
I think that day pretty much stuck out in my mind more than any other day. It was just, that was the first time I really had to cry on camera, and it was the first time ever dealing with an emotion like death at 6, or it was a very rough day for everybody, I remember. I think that was one of the most poignant days on the film for me.
When she told me she's gonna leave, I was very frustrated because I didn't want to see her go. I thought she was a tremendous asset to the show. I just felt that we were losing something, you know, losing a very important component for the show.
Even if we only had a brief time, it'll be worth an eternity.
Hand of God really kind of brought home what the series was all about. In a sense, it brought us full circle. Everybody walks out their back door at night and looks at the stars. We all wonder, is there life out there? And probably that element was one of the most important elements about Battlestar, is exploring the fact that life may have begun out there. Maybe it started here and evolved out there, and it's returning.
Where did these people come from? Where are they going? At what point in the history of Earth is this all taking place? If we'd gone a second and third season, if the show had continued, I don't think there would have been a limit to where it would have gone, because you've got the religious aspects, you've got the mythological aspects, you've got the scientific aspects, you've got the humanistic aspects of this. It was all there, and we were just getting out of the blocks, and somebody pulled the plug.
I mean, of course, the great tragedy being that the series had such potential, and the politics were oppressive. I know there are greater tragedies in life, but in the television world, that was a biggie, and it was a very sad thing to see it go, especially in hindsight, seeing the loyal following of the people that have stayed with us for all these years. It's such a phenomenon to all of us.
It just amazes me wherever I go in the world, you know. People know how to say Battlestar Galactica in God knows how many languages.
It had a phenomenal appeal. I think Battlestar Galactica was kind of a milestone in American television.
There was a spirit to the show that was beyond the plot, beyond the acting, beyond the special effects. There was the core of the show that I think people responded to.
Battlestar Galactica wasn't just another sci-fi show. It wasn't just a space opera. It was actually about something. It was about the epic journey in all of us to find our place in the world. And I think it touched people in a very profound way, and it will always touch people. Even watching the original episode, which I just did, I realized that, you know, even 25 years later, that heart and the spirit and the soul of that story is still there, and it's always about the epic journey that we're all on as spiritual human beings trying to find our place. And I think Battlestar really embodied that, the heart and the spirit of that.
The show stumbled into a universal theme that is unique to all things that are successful about mankind, you know, family and survival and getting along. And I think that everybody can relate to that. I think that's why it's grown in popularity. And also, you're left with this, what it could have been or what it would, and the story is truncated. What was coming next, and there was this tremendous feeling of foreplay. The best was yet to come. You know, the best was. It was just, and all the characters were, and there was these relationships happening, and the show got better as it went on. And then it was just like unceremoniously. So there was no announcement, there was no last show, there was nothing, it was just gone.
You really gonna give us a medal? Did I say us? I think they're just decorating me. I tell you. And cut!